Welcome to another installment of the Agency Acceleration Series. I am super pumped today because we are going to be talking about SMBs and what SMBs most want from agencies. So if you've been following along or coming to some of these other sessions, you know that SharpSpring has built our whole business really around agencies, which is why this content is so important to us. Today, we're talking to Chris Brogan. I'll introduce him in a second here. But with SharpSpring, we're really focused again on the agency market, and I know that so many of you, especially in this economic environment, might be struggling to grow or struggling to find the right marketing tools and sales tools for your business, which is why we really built the platform as an agency-first platform, and it's why we're doing these sessions. So we have many more to come. After this session, I'll talk about some of the other speakers that we have coming up here. So Chris and I had a chat earlier this week, but Chris Brogan, if you're not familiar with him, is president of Chris Brogan Media, and they help mid and large size companies with business storytelling and marketing, as well as CEO of Owner Media Group that offers webinars, courses, and private coaching to help SMBs grow. And he's also spoken and consulted for some very large and familiar brands to many of you: Disney, Coke, Google, GM, and many more. So here's how it works today. So we are going to have an initial session that was pre-recorded by Chris, which is really great. I'm excited for all of you to see it. And then we're going to go to a live Q&A afterwards via this platform. And I know that people out there are joining us live streaming on a number of different platforms: YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And so welcome to all of you. Thanks again for joining. So just really quickly, housekeeping wise, feel free to chat in your questions at any time during this session, and I'll try to get to those as I can as I'm posing questions to Chris. But right now we're going to go to the quickly pre-recorded session for about 15 minutes, and then you're going to see me again, and we'll introduce you to Chris. Give it a second for the video to catch up to the audio, especially if you're on a slow connection. So thanks again. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Chris Brogan, and I'm really happy to present for you a little bit about what small and medium businesses want from agencies. My experience, by the way, to just set your stage for where I am and how I fit into the world, is I'm not from an agency background. My marketing background came directly from the front line and not really from any kind of education in that space. I was just a guy who worked in some businesses and then who rode the wave on a bunch of different technologies and found myself suddenly in the forefront of people thinking actively about how do we use digital tools to build and connect and sell relationships, opportunity, and everything like that across the web and all these various media. And so I wanted to start you there because I wanted you to understand my perspective doesn't come from being a small business owner, though I am, having worked with tons of medium businesses and smaller businesses and the biggest names you've ever heard in business, which I have, and most definitely not because of agencies, because the best I've ever done with an agency is work in and around them and been hired by them to be part of the puzzle of helping businesses get where they want to go. So I'm not selling you anything in this except for giving you some pointers for what I see with my business clients and what I see with people out in the main world that might be useful to you and that might give you a sense of where to put your efforts and whatnot. I'm sure you've heard at one time or another in this entire series of presentations things about, these uncertain times, and aren't we all tired of that phrase already? Well, the reason we're tired of it is because our brains do this really interesting thing, and it's a baseline thing our brains do. Our brains say, am I in trouble? No. Am I in trouble? Yes. Do I need to pay attention to this? No or yes. That is the first line, the primal line. This is what kept our ancestors safe or not from saber-toothed tigers line of our world. So when we hear repetitive phrases in the negative sense of that, when we hear cliche, our brain shuts down. So the moment we start copying somebody else, agencies, the moment we start copying somebody else, people tune out magically. It's just power. It's just they knock it right out because they decide this is it. I don't have to pay attention anymore because you've just indicated to me that you're going to say things that I've already heard before. So the first thing you need to really do is have some sense of contrast. You have to have some sense that in your message, in your how you're communicating on behalf of small and medium businesses, that you're not saying the same thing you would say for other businesses, and you're not saying the same thing similar industry businesses would be saying, but that you're saying things in a way that are going to really connect with the people that you're hoping to reach on behalf of the client. Let's start there. So contrast is important. The reason that contrast becomes important more so is that more than ever, small and medium businesses, and every time I say that in my head, I'm saying and large, because what business wouldn't want their agency to be their voice and not just be something interesting for people to look at on the way to buy the product. For far too long, we've considered marketing just the thing that salespeople can wiggle in front of a buyer until they buy. But that's not how it's ever really worked for customers, and that's not how it should work for the company and or the agency. Marketing is a tuned up system that is meant to deliver the opportunity to sell and serve by really reflecting the points, the values, the interests, the intentions, and way more important these days are those core values of the company that makes the product or service you're hoping to buy, right? So it's not all in service of, you can buy this cool camera. It's, you can buy this camera made by these people who have a belief that capturing all of your memories is really important. You know, when just before he left Kodak, there was a big push led by Jeffrey Hazlett and some others to talk about the CMO of a household being the chief memory officer. And that's an important way to look at how we're making the things that we make. It's important that we pay attention to the whole concept of how are we going to say something in a way that represents what the company intends to be on behalf of the buyer, and how do we say it in a way that really reflects all of those things, the values, the interests, the intentions of not just the company, but that ecosystem that you're hoping to serve. This is as good a time as any when I talk about contrast to talk about something that I've done in positioning and writing and all that for what I've done for companies for a lot of years. Make your buyer the hero. Make your buyer the hero is just a simple concept of saying, make sure that the people that you are serving understand that they're Luke Skywalker, they're Princess Leia. And like Donald Miller says in his story brand books, you're Yoda. So your job is to give Luke the tools to go off and fight Darth Vader and save his friends, right? That's the goal. So when you're selling whatever you're selling, stop making it as if you're the hero. Make it as if you're the person who's equipping the hero. We equip our customers for success. That's the job. So in your contrast, that's the first part. What any business wants with regards to marketing, all that, is also a combination of reach and exposure. So reach and exposure are kind of what we think of as primary marketing and advertising tools, right? So if you see the same ad a bunch of times in retargeting, then that's a lot more exposure to the ad. If you see it on pretty much every site you ever go to, that's reach, right? So reach plus exposure are two things that we always want to see in everything we do with the customers and the people we have the opportunity to serve. And so examples of that are just the mechanics of marketing and advertising, meaning spend on ads, definitely spend on ads. It's interesting. People have me pegged as one kind of a person because I do a lot of content creation and because I say a lot of good things about social platforms and social networks. And I still think there's some great value and some great opportunities in doing so. But I also think that if you're not looking at the number one and number two search engines in the world, Google and YouTube, owned by Google, then you're missing out on an opportunity. If you're not thinking about Facebook ads, I mean, I could throw $20 into Facebook and turn it into $2,000 just in my own needs, just the things I do. So why wouldn't you get that kind of ROI, right? So that's reach and exposure. That tends to handle itself. And as an agency, you just have to always be pushing the importance of it. The thing I would sort of maybe tell an agency in that case is that automation matters, that you have to really get a lot better at using the marketing technologies that go with it. Hey, who's giving this seminar anyway? They have tools. After reach and exposure, the very next thing that you need to think about is articulation. Articulation sounds like such a big word. For all I mean is be brief, be clear. Be brief, be clear. Now, in this time, more than any other time so far in our history, people are so distracted. People are so overwhelmed. Hey, you're not even looking at me anymore. You're in another tab doing other stuff. I know. It's okay. Come on over for a minute. Come back to this tab just for fun. We're all doing that. No one is watching this, with super intent unless you're the one who's like, paying for this event. That's it. You know what I mean? Like if you're the one who funded, having all these speakers come, you're watching to make sure I didn't mess up. But everybody else, we're all just part of a slurry of information. So articulation matters. And articulation is the, clarity and brevity. Your message has to be tight, simple, repeatable. And so when you're helping market a small, medium business, your job is to be really clear, really brief. People can't stand all the backstory. There's jokes about if you ever want a recipe on the internet, get ready to hear about that person's dog and how they had a really weird front porch growing up. Because you don't ever just get the ingredients and how long to cook everything. Every blog post about a recipe is like a 20-minute ordeal now. That's not what people really want, but it's just kind of what we've come to expect, and it's what we've come to get because people copy each other, again, for the copycat comment earlier, right? So articulation is clarity and brevity. Can you say it simply? Tell it to me like I'm 6 years old. And can you say it briefly? Small words said fewer, small words, smaller sentences so that you can repeat them if you have to. Clarity and brevity, it so matters. So that's what articulation is about. The next two and last two thoughts of what small businesses need and medium businesses need are trust and what I call echo. And those kind of go together as well. But they want to trust and understand who you are. We talk a lot about this concept of authenticity. I'm doing quotes because, and if you're not watching, I'm making air quotes. I'm doing quotes around trust because a lot of times when we talk about authenticity, we don't really mean that. What we mean is we want to appear authentic, or we want to appear like we care, or we want to appear like we are exactly who we are all the time. There's a point to it insofar as you kind of want to show your best face or whatever. But the other part of business, the other way that makes authenticity actually happen is integrity. Now, the word integrity gets used wrong all the time. But integrity really just basically means the integratedness of what you're doing. What you say is what you do, and you back it up. If you say our customers are the most important people in the world, and there's a 10-minute call hold time, your customers are not the most important people in your world. You have to, think that through if you're going to talk about authenticity. So the way it works with trust is that people trust those people that they think are like them. We buy from people we like. That's number one. And then also we trust and believe in people that do what they say they're going to do, which sounds so basic. I know you're like, I can't believe I'm watching this, but we're not doing it. You're not doing it. You're not, and there's a gap between how you market and advertise and what gets done. And that's how it has to happen. And then echo is the thing what people think they're saying when they say authenticity, which is it's sort of that I'm a lot like you kind of a thing. I'm a person of the people. I'm in this space. We ran into this at the very beginning of coronavirus, if you noticed. A lot of celebrities and a lot of people that we gave our attention to, we suddenly had that feeling of, wow, I'm home eating kind of back of the fridge kind of stuff now. And they're complaining that they can't go out to somewhere fancy for their award show. That sense that they're not like us as much as those trashy daytime, news things at the grocery store want us to say they're just like us. No, they're not. Echo is I'm like you. And, I'm pulling some of this from a book I wrote a long time back. I wrote this book in like 2010, 2011. And one of the examples I used was Adele. Because I watched Adele in this amazing concert hall, Royal Abbey Hall, I think it was. And she said she kept talking to the community as if you were the only two people there, her and you. And she would talk to people as if she was just talking to a girlfriend about something over coffee. And it was beautiful. And Adele was, at that time, probably the number one artist in the world at that moment. and she still could talk to a massive crowd of people as if it was just one person. Now, mind you, I'm watching a DVD of this performance where this many tens of thousands of people felt seen, and I'm watching the DVD of people feeling seen. That's how you know, right? So that's echo. So I said contrast. You have to say it different than everybody else. I said that reach and exposure were like the advertising parts of things, right? So I thought that was important. I talked about articulation, and that's really just clarity and brevity. I talked about trust and how that applies to authenticity, and echo. Can you seem like the people that you're intending to serve? That spells out the word create. That's why it's the way that it is. And it's actually the impact equation from my book, The Impact Equation. But I repurposed it for today because I think that's what people need today. People need those elements so that they can reach people in this crazy slush of information that's around. I want to give you just a couple real quick takeaways to drive this home so you can actually do something with this, okay? So if you're thinking about using a pen and a paper, now's your moment. All right, I want you to grab these thoughts. One is write emails if you're doing email newsletters, and you darn well should. Write all your email marketing as if it comes from a human being and as if that human being is trying to reach you. And the only real reason you would not do that is if you're doing sort of like pure e-commerce kind of stuff, and then you don't have to do this. Everybody else do it that way. Write as if you're writing a letter directly to people. I tend not even to use much of the formatting. I want it to look like plain text, even though it's technically HTML. I want it to look simple. Remember also to look through all of your processes and write this down. To automate is human. And what that means is look for points of automation where you can have something that does really useful things for your business, especially kind of behind the scenes, to grab the reports that you need, to pull real-time data where you need it, so that you have time to deliver much better human interaction and much better all-around connection to the people that you're serving. So to automate is human, needs to be written down. The next thing I would say is build these questions into all your content creation and all your content distribution and all that. Who does this serve? And if the answer isn't the people you serve, your customers or your clients or your prospects, then don't even create it. Good news, we won an award. No one cares. 0 people care. Stop sending that. So who does this serve? It's a question to have as a checklist to your content. Who does this serve? Am I clear? And am I labeling the intention of this communication? Meaning, if you want someone to buy something, then say, here's a sale. If you want someone to attend a webinar, say, we want to give you more skills. Is it clear? When people mix messages or add too many things to one letter or in any way convey too many messages, people are getting lost right now, and that's it. So is the content clear? What's the intent of the content? And then I guess lastly, does it feel like humans wrote this or recorded it or whatever? Does it feel like humans made this? That's a really important checkpoint. It sounds dumb, and if you write it down, you're going to be like, I can't believe I just wrote this down. But does it feel like humans made this? Might actually save you some choices. Now, I guess I'll give you one last one. And this is sort of related to things that have come to light this year in time. Are we being sensitive to a lot of perspectives? Are we being sensitive to a lot of perspectives? And that means, is this inclusive enough? Does this take into effect that there are multiple types of homes that this might be going to? Even if it's B2B, does this consider what kinds of people will be at that business? And I think that's a good last useful point for some takeaways. And hopefully this was useful to you. Hopefully you found it good. This is what I think agencies need to give to small and medium businesses. I think it's what everybody wants right now. I'm Chris Brogan. Thank you again for your time.
And we are back. So hopefully everybody was able to join the past few minutes. If you recently joined, don't worry. We're going to have Chris live here just a second. And let's bring on Chris Brogan. Thank you for the phenomenal session. You and I had a chance to meet and talk earlier this week. Really enjoyed it. So for the people that don't know you, Chris, talk more about your personal journey and kind of how you arrived at becoming a president and CEO of two different companies. You're on, Chris. You're good to go. Sounds like Chris is having a few audio issues, so he can't hear us. Let's let him know that you're good to go.
I hear you now.
Awesome.
Phew! A little panic. That works. Talk to me about your background, your personal journey, and being president and CEO of two different companies. Well, you give yourself titles when you start a company, and I was going to take something more like the floor mopper guy, but you don't get as many phone calls if you don't do the real kinds of titles. So here I am, and so glad to connect. And sorry about the brief delay there. I was no audio. I started the couple of companies that I've been running lately just because all along the way I've been trying to help companies figure out how can they connect at a distance with people, how can they use content to build and nurture a community, and then serve and build a marketplace or nurture a marketplace. And so my big goal is to help people work all the way through to what they need to earn this. And so I love a lot of different technology tools. I love email marketing. I love automation tools and all that. And my big goal with all of it is how do I help people grow?
That's cool. By the way, for the audience there, I was just telling Chris earlier on how chill he seems in these things. For a man who does lots of podcasts and lots of live streaming, he seems like this is just another day, right? Which in that, when audio things go wrong, it seems like you roll with it so well. So well done.
Thanks. I haven't perfected my lip reading yet. I'm still kind of edging my way forward. So I just thought you were asking me something about a train.
Yeah, I wasn't. So, there's so many good nuggets, by the way, in the video that you shot there for us. And one of the things of many that resonated with me, frankly, was the create format. So contrast, reach, exposure, articulation, trust. So talk more. You mentioned it was part of your recent book, The Impact Equation. But talk more for our audience. What's most salient now, do you think, and especially for our agency partners joining us today? Yeah.
So Impact Equation, I wish it were recent. That was way back, 2010 or something like that. But it's out of all the books I've written, and I'm on my 10th book now working on it. That one seems to resonate a lot with agencies and businesses. And in general, the concept is easy. You write the word create. I'll teach you something that's not in the video. You write the word create, and then you draw little lines up from all those letters, and you kind of scale things 1 to 10 to ask yourself versus you and your competitor, how much contrast, how much do you stand out from the competitor? Reach and exposure. If you're Nike, you have massive reach and exposure because reach and exposure is basically advertising. Articulation, do you say it cleaner than someone else? So you might not be Nike, but you might have an incredible value prop. And then trust and echo are, do people feel like they trust you and you can connect with them? We actually stole our friends Charlie Green and David Maister's trust equation, which I've written about in Trust Agents, this book, and everywhere else I can. I just like to steal their work. And then echo is basically, do I see myself in you? So if you draw the word create, kind of horizontally and then put those little lines up, almost like old-fashioned stereo equalizer buttons, you can really start to think about a strategy of how you want to go after that, because you might not have the budget to reach and expose somebody, but you most definitely can win and trust in echo, or you can really stand out in some cool way in contrast. So to me, that's what the formula is about. And I think agencies can really use that to both identify the way their client that they're pitching is working, and also to talk about their own stuff. Everything I make available, it works internally and externally, because I just feel like the challenges that marketers have are often the same challenges leadership has. So we all communicate, and those are the tools.
Yeah, and part of articulation is the brevity and the clarity. Just kind of a quick follow-on question: is there, people in agencies that are targeting SMBs, is there something about brevity and clarity that's extra important for them?
one of the conversations we had before we got to this part when we were sort of backstage chitty chatting was that the word PTSD came out, saying that after all this pandemic, there's this feeling of PTSD. Well, that's an actual thing. There's a bunch of doctors saying that we are all suffering very mild versions of this, and so there's a challenge there for people. Well, post-traumatic stress disorder basically means that so much input has happened that we're sort of fuzzed out on our responses and whatnot. So brevity and clarity become important because we're taking in so much information. We're overwhelmed with so much information coming at us that we need to be really clear, brief, and concise with everything we do. It also relates to how we're consuming things ourselves. YouTube consumption is up. Netflix consumption is up, so much so that both companies had to throttle their output. They had to lower the bandwidth on their output because they just were worried that the world's internet was going to collapse in pandemic. And so I think that it's a super important challenge to make sure that you realize that you're not even competing against a competitor's product. You're competing against a YouTube video. And so you really need to be brief, to the point, and making sure that people can repeat back your message.
Yeah, no question. It's interesting. I mentioned to you, Chris, last week, we had Drew McClellan on the series, and
Right.
Drew talked about, focusing your messaging. And as an agency, you should be great at this, right? I mean, this is what you do theoretically with a lot of your clients, right? You help them with their own messaging. And for some reason, we're the cobbler's kids often as agencies. But let me transition here a little bit to another question on SMBs. Can you think of like services that agencies should provide SMBs that there not enough of them are doing today?
I'd say there's sort of a relationship change that we need to talk about. And in my take, what's happened is that there was a time where a lot of companies looked at their agency as basically, you do all this work and then hand me the Glengarry leads and let's all call it good. And that's how that worked. And it's not that way anymore. Agencies have to serve as kind of a guide person. So we were talking about our mutual appreciation ship of the book and the system, Story Brand, with Donald Miller. And he says in that, you got to remember that your customer is always Luke or Leia, and that your job as an agency is to be Yoda. Your job is to equip them with the technology, tools, and skills to get going. The other thing also that agencies really need to deliver that has not normally been the case is a lot more education on transmitting and translating values and really making sure that the message and the intentions of the organization shine through in every piece of the work. There are so many agencies who just have, quote, funny creative or interesting creative or innovative creative. And they're still going off those old timey formulas, like let's figure out what we can be the first in or the best in or the only in. And I think that FBO kind of marketing, while it can still sometimes raise an eyebrow in a positive way, what we really want is we're really sick as a human entity. People are really, really, really tired of trying to fit in, and we want to go where we feel like we belong.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you mentioned Story Brand and Donald Miller, and we did chat about that earlier this week. And I just love the idea of the customer being the center of your messaging. And it sounds like such a basic concept, right? But not enough of us do it, I don't think, right, when you're developing messaging. So this is a question as it relates to Story Brand. You call your training program Story Leader. So what does it mean to be a story leader?
So a lot of the work I've done over the last bunch of years has been marketing type work. It's external facing, it's social media and digital marketing and content marketing. I've done years and years of content marketing, and of course, always email marketing. Story leader is one slight difference, where in which I decided to pitch to leadership inside the company that if you had better alignment on three certain categories of story, what it means is if the internal elements of the organization are alignment this way, then all the external stuff with agency or otherwise makes more sense. So Story Leader has my premise with Story Leader is that there's three main story types. First is mission stories. What's our mission and how do we tell that in multiple ways? You've heard mission statement. Well, a mission story is just kind of making that go a little further. So Yeti, who makes those really interesting mugs and thermoses and those sorts of things, they want you to get outdoors outdoors and have the best possible quality for your gear around your dining experience and your pleasure while you're out there doing it. They're kind of more for the glamper than they are the hardcore camper, but everything they make is stainless steel and mighty. And so their mission might be that they want, mighty legacy, equipment that's going to last a long time and have its own story. That's a mission story. Belonging stories are making sure you tell a story of how you feel so that people understand that they're where they belong. So look at things like inclusion and diversity. If along the way you're talking about we're the kind of company that really values a diverse group of humans, and we really want to make sure that we represent that in our employees, in the customers we serve, the clients, everybody that we have access to, well, then people who want that are going to gravitate towards that, and you're going to know that you're where you belong instead of where you're trying to fit in. Third kind of story split in half. It's called a growth story. One half of that is sort of like good old timey Tony Robbins kind of growth, like motivation and rah-rah, like here's how you get to some new level, cue the music from Karate Kid or something. Then the other half of growth stories are tying your what you said you believed in your belonging stories and what you believe in your mission stories to what's going on day to day. So, we said we're a very family forward friendly company. I've noticed that you've taken a real lot of time off lately. And while that's good for supporting your family, you have to remember that your family at work also has families. And we have to really kind of look at your attendance and that sort of a thing. Well, once you have your mission, your growth, and your belonging stories kind of nailed down, all marketing and any external agency kind of work has to really align with that. Because what you get otherwise is you get these kind of like marketing of the day. I'll throw one company under the bus just for fun, which is Burger King. Burger King has this big anti-bullying campaign, but they ran it for like a couple of weeks, and that was the last you ever heard of anti-bullying. Burger King said, we really support the LGBTQ community, and then you never heard about that again. And so, and I don't know and they hire and fire their agencies faster than, like most big companies do. But it's really important that if, we're watching this now, we who consume advertising and marketing are saying, your ads are kind of out of alignment with what's going on in pandemic. Your ads are out of alignment with what's going on in kind of the diaspora out there and all that. There are so many ways that a company really has to, has to really go deep into the company if they're going to want to go out in a way that's consistent to the values and beliefs and stories that are being told.
That's great. So, Chris, I mentioned it earlier, but you've worked with a lot of large brands, and you obviously work with agencies that work with SMBs, and you've worked with SMBs too. And you yourself are an SMB, right? I mean, pretty small company.
I'm the S-ist of SMBs, yeah.
So I'm going to go to one question that's come in from Chris, very relevant to the topic here. And Chris asks, what do you think SMBs need most help with when it comes to digital marketing?
I would say in regards to what they need help with most with digital marketing, it's to really work hard to not try to fit the spreadsheet boxes. It's to really work hard to really at every single turn say the purpose of marketing teams is to generate the marketplace. The marketplace is everywhere now. There was this really great bunch of ads from Levi a long time back called "The Frontier is All Around Us," and what they were saying is that these beat up old towns in places like Braden, Pennsylvania don't make sense anymore. And everybody's kind of like sad because their industry has gone away and all that sort of a thing. But what that also means is there's a big opportunity to rebuild and reestablish the frontier. And so it's important that if you think of the frontier being all around us, meaning opportunity, the marketplace is everywhere too. Historically, the marketplace was like inside a castle or on a special crossroads in a trade route. And those marketplaces still exist in places from thousands of years ago. But the digital marketplace, when we say things like digital marketing, oh yeah, that was Mark Whitaker who asked that question, is what I'm being corrected. Marketing now, digital marketing is going where the buyer might be. And it's trying to nurture the community that draws the interest in the content that's being created by the agency on behalf of the client. So, I mean, if you went down to real tax, it's really about trying to make sure it's connected deeply and tightly to the intentions of the organization so that nothing is ever throwaway, nothing is ever just a spreadsheet filler, and that you use the right tools so that you have the time. We talked about to automate as human, and I know that's a question later, but you use the right tools so you have the most time possible to serve people in a personable way by using all this great new technology that exists to make clients more connected better with what you're selling.
I mean, there's so much to pay attention to now for an agency leader, right? And marketing itself is, so many different technologies and mediums and channels and things like that. So, speaking specifically to SMBs, when you think about this market and agencies trying to attract small and medium-sized companies, is there sort of a roadmap? What should they focus on first? How should an agency think about that?
If I'm trying to pick up new clients, what I would do most is I would make really specific on-ramp kind of opportunities available for the people that I might get the chance to serve. So for instance, if they always ask the question, should we make a big proposal out of this? Should we spin up a lot of work? I mean, one of the first things you can do is start thinking through, why would this potential client need a little bit of help growing? Do they need a little bit of help growing? What do we have as a very first few impressions of this? And how do we communicate that if you work with us, it's just going to be as easy as signing a few checks, 2 or 3 meetings, and we're off to the races. It's important that in this spot. So I've sold and done a lot of business myself in DIY type stuff. Here's your online course. Go learn this and be smart. And one of the things that I've learned over the time is that for as much as I try to sell do-it-yourself kind of projects, what we've really shifted to is do-it-for-me projects. So pre-pandemic, this analogy would make a little bit more sense, but we didn't want to be in the restaurant anymore. We wanted to go to the grocery store. But then when we went to the grocery store, we changed our mind and said, never mind, you can make the food at the grocery store. We'll eat it here. So that's that sort of DIFM. That's when you go to the deli counter and they've got the rotisserie chicken already made and a couple of sides of mashed potatoes already ready for you. I think that's what we want in marketing now. So an agency has to come with some pre-connected, pre-assembled scenarios ready to go for a client, so that they don't have to think too hard about getting in. You've already given them a good jump. So, and look, I don't work for SharpSpring, and I'm here because I like the people there. But all the conversations I had with SharpSpring over the last year have all centered around all the different ways they provide education and all kinds of tools to work with the agency partners they have. And I think that's what's going to win. They're like, look, agency partner, here's what we sell that you could sell that will make everything go so much better. I think that's what agencies have to bring further down the road to their client, is say, this is how we help you. And I really want to make sure that you get, your business done this way, because we've got tools that we know can help you get there.
Yeah, that's great. We do have it's kind of a strong following here of our existing partners plus new people that we're just building a relationship with. So it's been fun to see all the people joining these sessions. So more questions are coming in, Chris. And this might be super current and important these days, right? Because some agencies have fared really well in this environment, some not quite as well. And I think it's true that all agencies are kind of leaning in and focusing on retention. And that's what this question is about. So Josh said, how do you improve retention of SMBs given tighter budgets during this time?
I mean, so in some ways you have to look at how people are going to work with and/or manage their budgets anyway. So for instance, some people are, they've got their payment system set up that they're going to do pay every 6 months or pay every year or whatever. Well, one quick, easy way to keep the same budget going is have them pay quarterly or monthly or whatever you want to do. Now that can make you freak out as an agency because you're kind of counting on certain revenue. And when you break that number down a little, that scares you because you're like, well, what if they cancel or something? Or what if they just choose not to pay the next one? Well, if they can't pay, they're not going to pay. That's not a thing to think about. But making it easier to pay is one way, which you never would expect it would be my answer, but it is. The other is every time you make it easier for someone to earn more customers and solve their challenges and not make it like, oh, that sucks, is another chance to win. So there are so many businesses that are suddenly having to do contactless remote business and they're struggling. So if you think that the way out of that is to help them with some cool new coupon ideas, you're not going to be in business for very much longer. But if you help them figure out delivery mechanisms, if you help them figure out other promotion mechanisms, if X is gone, then what can we do as Y to make something light them up? There's such an opportunity for agencies, especially smaller, more flexible agencies, to get very custom and very personalized with the solution. And there are just so many opportunities to really articulate a very unique one-to-one kind of experience. And look, everyone wants to systematize, right? If you run an agency and you figure out if you do one website, 10 emails into this, everybody gets a prize. No one's buying that way right now. They're buying in that feel that this was made just for them, only for them. You've never done it before, even if you do it every single day that ends in Y. And that's what people want. They want to feel like they've been hand treated to the best possible solution for them.
Yeah, so there are potentially some advantages that SMBs have even over some of the larger enterprises that you worked with, and that's the next question that came in from Kerry. She says and asks, what marketing advantages do SMBs have over big companies? How would you articulate that, having worked with both?
To me, I'm look, I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. Most every of the clients I had that were logos you would so want on your logo slide when you're doing your little pitch deck are the kinds of people who their cream cheese budget is bigger than my entire, overhead for my company. You know what I mean? And so working with some of the biggest guys, the problem that they always have is that everything is so systematized. Everything fits a spreadsheet row. Everything is absolutely uniform, and they just cannot turn so fast. It's like having a big fleet ship in the Navy compared to a small gunboat. The gunboat doesn't have as many resources, it doesn't have any of the stuff that a big giant ship has, but boy, can it move fast, dodge things, redirect and realign and take on the environment. I think there's so much more benefit to being small or even medium, but with a small look, because then you can get that boutique look and feel. And look what everyone's trying to copy. There's this right now at this very moment, the most exciting thing going on in advertising is a guy jumped on his skateboard, listening to Fleetwood Mac and drinking Ocean Spray. And it's become a massive thing. And marketers are going to rush in and ruin it because this is why we can't have nice things. But who's going to get there fastest are the small guys who don't have anything to lose. And I think that when you say, well, that's not our play, but what does that inspire us in plays? A little guy's just going to get there faster. The two things that smaller companies tend to accidentally do is worry that they don't have the credibility. What their client doesn't care about at all are which awards you've won. They care about, can you land me the customers that I need? Can you turn it from I have 14 customers a day to 74 customers a day? No one kicks anyone off the team for making them bags of money. And that's really the only thing you should be aiming at.
Got it. So Chris, I want to transition back to just a question that I had after talking to you earlier this week. So you and I caught up and talked about your years in the SaaS industry, and really just how you were very much a self-starter and kind of learned by doing over time, and I think you said you started blogging in maybe 2006 or something like that. And you
98 was blogging, but yeah.
98 you're blogging. Okay. But you can correct me here in a second. And so you built your personal brand over a period of time to become the Chris Brogan that you are now. So, like many things, personal branding is a thing now. You were just doing your thing back then, but talk about, through the lens of what agencies need to think about, why is personal branding important, right? And how do you apply those same principles to your agency?
So you can get in some awesome arguments. It's very church and state kind of stuff, or, stalactite, stalagmite to me about branding and whatnot. Because on the one hand, when someone says personal brand, there's a massive amount of people who roll their eyes and look at the ceiling and say, shut up. On the other hand, there's a bunch of people who think branding is logos, shirt colors, blue background versus red background and that sort of thing. And that's not it either. What's a brand ever really do? A brand says, I have this opinion of you when I think of this brand, and that means I have a certain expectation that goes with that opinion. And you have sort of my mental permission to not stray too far from this border that I've set up for you, which is why, you never buy ice cream at a gas station, right? So in branding, what you're always trying to do is you're trying to do what's going to make people have an expression of a thought or an opinion or an idea that you can then extend into other opportunities, because people don't always just buy a product for the product. They buy it for a thing. Kerry O'Shea Gorgone, who was asking a question earlier, she loves Johnny Cupcake, which is a clothing brand. And she has every Johnny Cupcake thing. It's a collectible kind of a thing, the same way pop figures are. And what you end up starting to do is you start, really believing in the story, the mission, the way it makes you feel. Like I said, we don't want to fit in anymore. We want to go where we belong. And so branding is just a question of, what does belonging look like in action? And that's branding. Branding is, what does belonging look like in action? And so what you start thinking about is, if I'm the kind of person who uses Apple products or uses whatever, then what else does that say about me? And how do I kind of work from that? And that's how, years and years and years ago, Steve Jobs, who was known as that guy who sells computers, sold a phone. And everyone bought it. And then he sold a watch because we liked the phone so much, and so on, right? He wasn't a phone company. He wasn't a computer company at that point. He would love to have said that they were a lifestyle company that focused on design as their most important element. Any company, any size, thinking about branding has to do that. When it gets to personal branding, all it really is, the thing you add the most to kind of make branding work really well inside agencies and whatnot, is personability, reputation, integrity, which is a word no one understands. I said this in the video as well. Integrity just means the integration of who you are in all spots. So if you're grumpy, be grumpy everywhere. If you're a jerk, then don't say you're not. And
be true to yourself.
Really. And I'll tell you another thing about that. So this is soapbox moment, so you could put your mufflers on if you need to. But like so I'm a comic book guy since I was 5 years old. So now that's 45 years ago. And I love comics. I'm thrilled that all these comic book movies came. But for instance, when they were going to make the movie Black Panther, they said, I don't think anyone's going to go to a black superhero movie. And the studio didn't really bet that big on it. It made $1.04 billion. And I think it's up to like 2.1 worldwide. It made more than most of the other Marvel movies in and around it, except for the big tent posts like Endgame and Initiative, all the Avengers ones. So it was a massive moneymaker. When I wrote my last mainstream book, which was The Freak Shall Inherit the Earth, I did a preface about it saying that Guardians of the Galaxy was coming out. And in a way, it just felt like the weirdest movie in the world to say that, sure, there's a human, but there's like a raccoon, a talking tree, a bunch of other weird things. And one of the deals of that is that there is absolutely a community you can serve for anything that you sell. Even if you sell toilet paper, there's someone who really cares what toilet paper. I like one ply because I don't like having to be a plumber. So that's my toilet paper. I'll die on that hill, right? That you can make a relationship with the products and services you sell, as long as what you sell is just a hair better than a transaction. And I think that that's the most important thing to take into personal branding, is that it's a real opportunity if you use it well. And there's just so many other ways you could use it poorly.
Yeah. I mean, that's great advice. And there's a piece of that talks about just the agency's role in leading their clients. And so we had a question come in that I think is very relevant for things that people are thinking about today. And Tim asks, how can we as agencies shift the mindset of SMBs to a post-pandemic mindset? This is a point in time, and we'll be past this at some point. How do you lead your clients that way?
So one of the outputs of this pandemic is that there's going to be some massive amount of people who are going to want to maintain some parts of what happened in the pandemic. I know that sounds insane. I know that you're thinking, yeah, because we're all super anxious to keep wearing our masks and things. Well, people are going to want contactless options for their business, for selling products and services. People are going to want the opportunity to have curbside pickup of their groceries until they're dead, because some people think that's so much better than going and walking around the aisles. They've really enjoyed the digital offer. So when you talk to this, the simplest answer, Tim, is stories, stories, stories. So you make use cases and stories on those use cases. The whole time, all you're going to do every single time is say, all right, well, your client is a mom and pop grocer, let's say. You say, well, look, all the big guys are doing curbside. You've got to get to doing curbside. Let's talk about what that would look like and how good that could be. Let's talk about how, you maybe don't even have to have the best app. You just have to have an app that people feel comfortable using. Or there's a phone order option. There's a little restaurant in my little town. My town is less than 2 miles across. There's not that many people in it. There's a little bitty restaurant, and he doesn't have an app or anything like that. In fact, it's kind of awkwardly, you call and you get the restaurant owner, because there's just not a lot of employees there right now because of the business pandemic and everything. But you get to talk to the person who makes your food, and he gets to entice you into the very small menu that they're serving right now, which is like pulled pork burritos and like incredible pork belly fat bites and these sorts of crazy things that you want to eat in a pandemic, or really good chips and guac. And what you do is you tell stories like that, and you say, well, there's this kind of way to do it, or there's this thing. You give serving suggestions. In World War II, grocery stores and magazines started showing serving suggestions for certain foods because, for instance, all the good food was going to the front, and housewives, because that's who did that work at that time, were being told, you've got to learn how to cook a cow tongue. And nobody would know what that meant or how to do it. And so they'd create serving suggestions. Well, you need to do that for your clients and say, this is one way to do it. Here's another way to do it. And don't give them too many options. Give them a few options, because the 1950s paradox of choice law is still in effect. If you get more than two options, then you have too many.
I love that example. In the case of cow tongue, I'm not sure if there's any serving suggestion that I would be into.
I'm not into it.
Anyway. Hey, I want to make sure that I get to this next question. Hopefully we'll be able to take a few more questions from the audience too. So if you haven't asked a question, please chat it in. We have a prepped question from Rand Fishkin, who's our guest next week. Many of you guys know Rand, I'm sure. So it's a great question from Rand. He asks, should agencies submit proposals for client projects that don't have a specific and transparent budget? So
100%. No, again, you got to understand, I've never run an agency like this. I've run a consultancy. So every project I have is, custom cut one time ever. The question to me sort of speaks like, you've got these kind of, I won't get out of bed for 400,000 kind of customers. And you have the, I wouldn't get out of bed for 20,000. And there's someone down the street that's like, $1,000 is good. I'm good with $1,000, right? So there's always a budget. One thing you might do to kind of get around the submitting the proposal, because it's a lot of work to write a proposal, right, is to have led somewhere ahead of that by saying, look, our projects usually run anywhere from whatever the number is to the other number, because it's going to give them the yes or no on the, should you even send in the proposal. I lean towards send it anyway, even if you don't know their budget. But I also lean on, if I'm going to do a real lot of work and I don't know, and you're sitting there thinking you're going to get, 300,000 worth of work for $400, then I wouldn't want to waste my time. So I think it becomes, the hungrier you are, the more free proposals you write with no real ends on them. And I think that the other answer to that, Rand, is that if you guide people a little ahead of time, then they start to get a sense of it. My consulting hour is a $500 amount, and I've said it a billion times. You pay $500 if you just want to sit with me for an hour. Now, a lot of times I give you the opportunity to earn that back if we do a project or something like that, and then you paid nothing for my time. But when I lead with that, whoever thinks $500 an hour is a lot of money goes, oh, I don't know if I can afford this guy. And whoever thinks that's reasonable, then that's who, the next step is given by that first step. And I think that one of the biggest problems we have with not talking price, or not, early and often kind of seeding the ground a little with price, is that it then becomes that we're all sort of living under this strange mystery of, is this or isn't this going to be fruitful? And I don't see any value to that mystery. I think making someone feel confident what their price is going to be like is a very useful tool.
So this might be the final question. Maybe we'll get to another one too. But you talked about your love of email, and I think you had some great advice in the video that we all wrote down. That write like it's from a human, and to automate is human, which is, I think, especially relevant for our marketing automation customers and audience and partners. So talk to me. The question came in about personas. When you think about that, how does that align with personas? And Kelly here specifically is asking, how can she convince a small law firm that they're working with that creating a persona is vital? And how does it relate to what you said earlier?
When I said about people are really tired of feeling like they need to fit in, they want to go where they belong. One of the scenarios about that, Kelly, is that you want to kind of pre-warm your prospective clients and whatnot of what kind of things you're looking to do, what kinds of processes you have in place, all those things. So it never hurts to kind of, warm people up to it. So if you're talking creating the persona, like the agency works with the client to say, this is the kind of person you're going after, right? And then the client goes, yes, that's what I'm talking about, right? If it's that kind of persona scenario we're talking about, then what you want to do is, it's just always easier to write to one person. And that was a piece of advice I got from a really legendary Boston area public radio person. And he said his secret to what was called the Tony Khan voice, and you can hear this in the video I did. So if you replay the video for entertainment value, you'll hear me speak as if I'm only speaking to you. And the reason I do that was because Tony Khan said, you speak as if you're speaking to one person. You speak as if you're talking to a person who is important to you, and that you want to give them some piece of information that you hope is of value to them. And that's how my communication voice works, because I stole it from Tony Khan. And what I do is I just think of that person who is important and who I really hope gets and understands this information. And I speak as if that's the person I'm going to try to address. You never ever hear me say in a video, "Hey guys, hi everyone," and I have these phrases that I use in how I do my video show and all that, where I never say my audience. I say the community that I have the pleasure to serve. There's no more clunky phrase than that, than just saying audience. And every now and again I slip because I'm still human, it turns out. But I always say to people, the difference between audience and community is which way you place the chairs. And so I would much sooner have a community that I serve that knows about each other and has that interaction. So that goes into that buyer persona. If that's not the case, I mean, think about law. Law's not like that. It's a one and done kind of a scenario. You want privilege, you want privacy. But what you can say is, I'm the person who lets you sleep so well every night. I'm the second best thing to your pillow to making you feel a certain way. Then that's the persona you talk to. You talk to saying, I've got this. I'm going to walk you through this. We're thorough so you don't have to be. And I'm going to ask you all the questions I think might jump out or you might miss, and that sort of a thing. And when you get that opportunity, so much good stuff can come of that. So much great opportunity to market in a strong way. So that's my answer.
I think it's a great answer, and it brings us near a close here, Chris. So the good news is right up in the chat here, we're going to share a couple of things for the audience. So one, I think we're going to share an email address that people can email us if they are interested in learning or sharing any additional questions that they might have or learning more about the series. We're also going to provide a link to the rest of the series so you can click on over and make sure that you're signed up. So if you're just joining us via live stream, you're able to catch Rand Fishkin next week. And Chris, thank you again. It was phenomenal. Really well done.
Chip.
And yeah, and this series is going great, and we're probably going to continue it next year. So maybe we'll have you back.
You never know. I'm ready for it.
You never know. Yeah. Thanks again. So I mentioned it. So next up for the Agency Acceleration Series is Rand Fishkin on 10/14. That's going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so a little bit different start time. And you may know Rand from the SEO world, but he's got a lot more going now, and really excited to have Rand on this show. And I believe he's going to be talking to our CEO, Rick Carlson, next Wednesday. So, and then after Rand, we keep on giving here. So on October 21st, we have Jason Swank, focused on growing and scaling your agency. On November 4th, we have Ann Smarty, specifically focusing on SEO for agencies. And then November 12th, Ann Handley's How to Create Ridiculously Good Content. So Ann, if you're not familiar with her, is just a luminary in the content marketing space, and you're definitely going to learn something from all of these sessions. Very excited to meet and talk to these folks also. So make sure you follow that link on over and connect for the ones in the future as well. I think my next slide is just asking for some feedback. We'd love to hear how you felt about this session today. Chris, I think, did a great job. Hopefully you feel like he did as well. He's got a lot more answers, where these came from. That's why we might have to have him back again next year. By the way, if you want to see a recording of this session, you can find that on our website as well as on the sharpspring.com/acceleration. But in the meantime, please let us know how we did today. Scan the QR code if that's your deal, or click on over to that URL, which would be my deal personally. So thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate you joining today. Have a great day.